Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining this webinar with Recognize, Scaling People Operations for Remote-Ready Companies. But let's get started. Waiting for people to join. Love for people to share in the chat where you're calling in from, maybe what you do, maybe where you work, or what industry you're in. So we'd love to just see who's here, and so I can tailor the call to y'all. But I'm here in the beautiful Seattle area where I grew up. But I've lived in California, lived in Texas, actually lived in Korea, but back home in the Seattle area. I love to see where everyone's at. It's always so fun to have people from all over the country, even the world, come into these calls with us. People who are passionate for employee engagement, company culture, how to advance themselves. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. No matter where you work or what you do, we're in these sessions to help our companies be better, help ourselves become better as well. So awesome. I love Wyoming. It's so beautiful there. 10 Sleep has incredible rock climbing. Guatemala, I love that. Florida, Maryland, Edmonton, that's great. Love it. North Carolina, Arkansas, New Jersey, California, love it. Thanks so much for everyone for joining. So today we're going to be talking about systems, rhythms, structures for remote first growth. And we're here to navigate the international hybrid landscape. It's never been a better place to be, never been a better time to be in HR. It's a growing field and it's becoming more of a strategic field. So, and there's a lot of fun things you can do around, especially international hybrid, because of the fact that you can take advantage of technology to reach and get the best of the best employees, no matter where they are, if you have the systems and rhythms and structures in place. So in a contemporary organizational landscape, particularly for entities that are at the 5,000 level, but we'll be talking about people at the 50-person level, the 150-person level, the 500-person level. But of course, at the 5,000 level threshold, it's defined by an unprecedented level of complexity, and it demands a fundamental look at how we do human resources when we are remote in an age of AI. Within an international organizational structure, it's a hybrid model, right, with both remote capable professionals and essential frontline workers oftentimes. So we need to think about these traditional HR administrative processes, these models, and just admit to ourselves that a lot of times they're insufficient now. And in some cases, it becomes a significant bottleneck to the organizational velocity and security. So in this session, we're going to be looking at how to focus on providing senior leadership with a strategic framework for preparing people ops to support sustainable, remote first growth in an AI world. And this focus is a shift of reactive management to the constructive system, a resilient system, to have predictable processes that preserve the cultural integrity of your great companies and allow you to grow as a distributed organization. Love all people still joining from California and New York. Love it. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Just want to say, who am I and what are we? I'm the CEO, co-founder of Recognize. Recognize is an employee recognition and rewards platform. I'll just give a quick show what that looks like. So, let's say you're a Microsoft company, you can have a full rewards capable solution inside Microsoft Teams, inside Outlook, on your phone. We have frontline worker features like text messaging or phone support, but people can redeem their points that they earn through our recognition engagement platform for charities or for swag or for live events. You can get us sporting tickets or concert tickets. You can complete an employee engagement survey within Recognize. You can check out the Hall of Fame of the top employees by the values of the organization. You can submit a challenge saying that you've completed that security training to get 10 more points, and we gamify the experience, or recognizing your colleagues for your company values with even specific questions you can ask per value, per category, and see the feed of all the recognitions across your company. So we're super dedicated to company culture, and that's who I am, is someone who has a background in psychology, background in software engineering. And so we have these sessions to help the HR profession or people passionate about company culture about people operations and HR to come together and meet in sessions like this. We're all in here together. So definitely take advantage of the chat. This is a live session. And so we're passionate about these things and we want to share and give back through these sessions. So one way I want to give back is a couple of weeks ago, I was fortunate enough to be in Vegas for the Great Place to Work conference. And if you're there, give a shout out in the chat. But being a great place to work is can be groundbreaking for your organization. You know, basically every single person who spoke, you know, it's a great place to work company. I checked their stock if they're a public traded company like Delta, like Hilton, and these are companies that are growing. And so great place to work companies are more profitable. So something to consider. It's essentially a survey. You can do the survey without them. You just can't get the certification. But I just thought it was really interesting to see a couple surveys that they had kind of people at the conference did. So you can see what outcomes matter most. The most important things that people said were increased manager effectiveness, improving engagement. I thought was really interesting. And then on the right here is AI adoption. So and this shows, you know, place a dot on where you feel comfortable, how you feel comfort of AI doing each job. So not a lot of comfort with AI first automation with escalation path, right? So AI will be doing it first. Maybe they feel great about that with chat, right? Like connecting it to your employee handbook or maybe some kind of, you know, low risk stakes, basically is what they're saying. I thought it was interesting that 0 people put in the, you know, just AI is customer face by default, but then I think on the back end would be, I guess, a person. And that would be recommendations for management actions was 0. So some things we want to keep within people, some things we feel comfortable using AI. Definitely focus on engagement and manager effectiveness. I thought it was an interesting survey. Okay. So back on track around what we're talking about here. So, you know, our workplace, you know, really we've seen has stabilized as far as pre-pandemic levels, right? But the hybrid continues to dominate. So it shows that this is not just a trend. Being hybrid or remote first is not a trend, and we need to leverage this to our advantage. And we can do this at a competitive level. And again, turn HR into a profit-making organization where we focus on the employee experience. So it's interesting to note that 61% of people, you know, prefer to be hybrid. So some amount of days they are at home. And that was interesting that people are willing to forfeit some of their revenue, their salary for a commute trade-off. That's how much people hate commuting. Personally, when I've done the Caltrain in San Francisco area, I found it to be quite relaxing. It was a bike ride to the train. I then worked on the train or ate or had coffee or meditated. But if you're in traffic, if you're on the 101 in San Francisco or the 10 in LA or the I-5 here in Seattle, in stuck and go traffic, it's really painful. I think in Vegas we went to the Tesla actually, self-driving Tesla. That really made traffic amazing actually. So once cars can drive themselves, I don't think that the commute trade-off will be as severe. But for now, you know, it's amazing that you can pay people less if you're just willing to let them work from home. So something to consider. All right, so this is really focused again on we starting at the 50 person and then we go to the 150 and then beyond. So 150 people, organizations can run like a tribal knowledge framework where it doesn't necessarily need such structure. But once you get to 5,000, that informal model obviously becomes a liability. And so, and then every new hire compounds the problem. There's this idea that's easy to wrap our heads around, which is the Dunbar threshold. You may have heard of it before. It's usually used in social situations. So it's the theoretical cognitive limit of approximately 150 people that we can handle as people, right? So I think we all know that after you're working at a company beyond 150 people, you stop knowing everybody, right? You stop having as many meaningful social interactions or relationships, right? So that number comes from the anthropologist Robin Dunbar. And yeah, it suggests the kind of brain size limit on the social network, on the complexity, right? And so obviously you can't just stop being companies at 150, we will go beyond that. But you know, there's kind of these 3 different levels of problems at each organization level, right? So 50 people, right? You're more focused on employment law, benefit compliance, entity structure, right? And then at 150, now you're crossing that Dunbar limit. Now you're thinking more about how to avoid these informal coordination fails. And then at 500 people, you're thinking about your manager variance, right? For every bad manager, the problem can compound. Inconsistent leadership approaches diverge into wild, different employee experiences, right? I think we all know we joined the company, we have a manager. So just thinking about these issues, and then there's this idea of the equation of connection. So the equations on the last slide, I'll just go back. It's the mathematical formula of communication lines is this. So essentially, at 5,000 people, there potentially could be 12 million communication pathways. So it's this exponential structure that occurs, and this can help leadership understand this problem as well, where the complexity of the organization can grow exponentially. So something really to consider and to show how serious it is. I think there's an example where if you fold a piece of paper 50 times, it can stretch almost to like 3/4 to the sun. I say it's like exponential ideas are really hard for us to wrap our heads around, and that's why it's nice to have a table that illustrates the challenge here when you increase an employee count. I mean, even at small companies, especially remote first companies, you'll be surprised how quickly communication can break down when people are having direct messages between each other. So so another issue is just a patchwork of so many different tools that are disconnected and not working together, because maybe one person bought something and they left, and then somebody else took it over, and then somebody else bought something else. But it's not always just the subscription cost. It's actually the fragmentation cost of each employee spending about 30 minutes a day on that time leakage, as we say. Direct result of operating so many disconnected tools without a unified data layer. So actually, I think we have a poll route to pull up. I was just kind of curious and to share with the group, like, how many different tools do you think you're using? And you can just guess based off of how many you think you're using. Obviously, the larger the organization, the more complex. Okay, let's end the poll. I'll end it. Okay, yeah, so actually people don't use as many tools as I was expecting. So I think that's really interesting. I would be curious to know the employee count as well, how that correlates, but we're not able to do that in this session. But yeah, interesting. I mean, 1 to 5, totally manageable, right? And that's great. That means we've probably done a lot of unification, which is great. 5 to 10, again, not a big deal, especially if you have that kind of data layer. I had a call yesterday with a company that has 5,000 employees, right? They have frontline workers, they're international, and they have an app store. They have an actual app store. And I would challenge on the 1 to 5s, if you're really thinking about what I mean by a system, I guess. I meant like, Zoom is a system, Microsoft Teams is a second system, SharePoint's another system. These are all systems. I think you maybe argue that maybe 365, you could have these kinds of one-stop shops. You have the Workday, you have the Microsoft. But really, I think it's like, for instance, in marketing, you could have HubSpot, but then you can also have Zoom, DocuSign, Calendly. And it adds up really fast. But essentially, so what this 5,000 person company did was they made an app store. So when you come into their dashboard, their intranet, it's a series of icons, just like you see in like where those some of those password management tools, like 1Password or something, where you come in and you see all of your apps you use, which I think is have that inside Microsoft Teams, have that in SharePoint, that app store that you have within your company. But the idea here is to eliminate technical debt, right? Consolidate your fragmented tools into a coherent stack. Remove manual workflows that silently drain productivity from every team. Unified these kinds of hire to retire architectures, right? Think about that. We're going to talk more about that later in the session. Build a seamless data flow right across the entire employee lifecycle, from the first application through the exit interview, and then definitely AI native operations. We want to be able to, by 2027, be automating a lot of what we're doing in HR up to 50% this year. Make some goals this year, Q2 to Q4 in 2027, and deploy more AI as a HR front door, freeing your people team to move from ticket triage to strategic advisory work. So talking about velocity, this is often the term used in software engineering, but I think it's important to use it in all departments, such as HR. So velocity is the global scale required to have a predictable heartbeat across all time zones. We are adopting a culture of discoverable information by default, where, again, you have that AI tied to your handbook, your wiki, your knowledge base, wherever that is, Confluence or Notion, eliminating the redundant meetings and replacing them with structured async cadences. And we're going to talk more about how to do that with the 3-3-3 rule later on in this session. But yeah, every decision becomes documentation, right? If it isn't written down, it isn't happening. That's something that the leaders should be saying. If it isn't written down, it isn't happening. This creates a self-governing knowledge base that scales without adding headcount. And I did want to touch on the 1-3-5 productivity rule. It's designed to prevent overcommitment by capping daily to-do lists to 9 things. You should not work on more than 9 things a day. I think that's actually beyond what you should really do personally in my life. But honestly, if I can get 1 rock done a day, that's incredible. But typically the 1-3-5 is 1 big task, 1 rock, 3 medium tasks, and 5 small tasks. And 5 small tasks could be like, clearing your inbox, organizing your to-do list, paying a bill. 3 medium tasks are, setting up a meeting with your team for later in the week on a recap, or planning an exit interview. A big task is reviewing Purchasing Recognize as an employee recognition platform. No, I'm just kidding. But seriously, you want to be looking at, how many things we're doing each day. And this will force prioritization of high impact work over busy work. It's so easy it feels good to be completing tasks, and actually when you complete tasks, you're actually more productive. So don't feel bad if you're always pushing off that rock. But we want to make sure that we are accomplishing those rocks. And, personally with my business partner, we hold each other accountable by reviewing what we're doing each week. And if we don't see those rocks being done, we bring it up. So you need that kind of culture where you can talk about things calmly and not have it be an argument with your team, with your direct reports, with the other mentors. I want to talk about this idea of a manager enablement index. So managers are really so important in our culture. We find that 70% of team engagement is solely driven by manager engagement by the manager. So we want to have that structure, and we want to have it be really strong. So by using the MEI, we can measure 5 major areas, right? Key areas for managers. So job authority, collaboration, consultation on change, growth opportunities, and performance management. So, we need to be training our managers regularly. I know HR loves this put together training. We've asked that in previous polls, and that's great. So create more training, learn from the best, use AI to create that training to make it even better than before, supercharge it to help managers have modern leadership skills, and teach managers how to use AI, Gen AI, to actually have those conversations with their employees and having better empathetic communication and inclusion. It's so important to manage the psychology, the psychological distress that we see, especially with remote workers. I mean, up to 46% of remote workers, yes, they're productive, but they might be burned out and they might be lonely. And so we'll talk more about that in the session, but something to be considering, and making sure that you're holding your managers accountable through a standardized, unemotional MEI. So some of the examples I just touched on. So use MEI, transition the thought of being a boss to more of a coach, right? Managers are coaches, not bosses. And that way, if they're a coach, they're thinking about teamwork as well. Something I've been thinking a lot about with my team is how can we play together well? How can we work together? I use sporting analogies, like if every football player was doing their own thing, they would not get to the Super Bowl. And then also we want to move from seat time to outcome performance, right? Outcome-based performance, and this will actually elevate our high achievers faster. So a couple things to consider there. Oh, and then also something else for shift for recognition. Tell managers you're not recognizing your teammates in a platform like Recognize to just simply say, good job, kudos, make them feel good, right? It's a record. It's recording that moment that occurred, that positive moment, and then you can use that in that performance review. You don't have to try to remember it or go through your old notes. It's all in one place. So that's why we want to shift the mindset from a boss to a coach. I just want to touch again on this idea around presence versus outcome. So the old model is how often you see people working at their desks versus what are the results, what are the KPIs. Looking at feedback from an annual perspective when we actually could be having weekly or bi-weekly coaching instead. And I think that's really powerful. So now you're having a weekly cadence or a bi-weekly cadence of reviewing. And not every one-on-one needs to be a stressful review of performance, but it needs to be regular. And then also we want to look at the difference between just trying to fix people's problems to actually how can we amplify strengths. So that's again a mind shift thing to more positive outcomes and learning how to better utilize your employees' strengths than their weak, and then try to move their weaknesses, right? You'll probably have a lot more success. So a few stats here that we've seen around remote work. I touched on the loneliness, I touched on the engagement, I touched on the stress, and these are the metrics from the research that we've seen. As HR leaders, we need to be actively tracking the loneliness gap to ensure our social rituals are sustainable, not just performative. And leaders are explicitly addressing the psychological well-being issue and not just looking at productivity, but also looking at the wellness of your organization. And one thing that we've seen is with employee recognition, with nurses specifically, a statistically significant improvement in well-being just by simply being recognized. So there's no one thing you can do, but I think workload is important. Teaching and setting examples as leaders, that's okay to take vacation, okay to take breaks. And if you're working from home, it's okay to work when you want to. Maybe you want to take a break in the afternoon. I think we all know that lull around 3 p.m. in the office or 4 p.m. or, it's time to, wind down. Sometimes it's nice to take a break and then come back to work if you can later on, if you're able to, depending on family requirements. But we want to, moving on, we want to help people be more productive with AI as well. So we find AI adoption to be highest with engineering teams, and funny enough, least with finance, which I think is absolutely ripe for adoption with AI. So we want to actually set some goals and benchmarks and be pushing as HR leaders, be pushing our leadership, our C-suite to have 50% of your organization using AI in some capacity on a regular basis, on a daily basis or weekly basis by the end of this year. And we want to see that we see an improvement in productivity, and high performing teams protect their time, right? And if we are using AI, especially things like OpenClaw or Perplexity Compute, these are things that you can utilize to take over tasks in the browser that used to be manual tasks. Definitely talk to your IT security team and make sure that you're using the right tools that are allowed, because allowing AI to take over your computer is scary, but you can use profiles within your browser to have new profiles, new people in your browser that don't have access to your work email, that are siloed, that can be doing tasks for you and don't have access to everything. So there are ways to work around it. So if people just say, no, we're not going to do it at all, I think that's a bad approach. I think we need to be pragmatic and find the right tools for us. So AI literacy is critical right now. It's the most in-demand skill in 2026. And our Q2 priority should be integrating it into the flow of work. And then so that we're by the end of the year, we're at 50% adoption. And we should see productivity increase as a result. People should be saying it is. And if they're saying they're not using it right. We predict around 30% increase in productivity this year just by AI, beyond just using it to write blog posts and things like that. It's especially powerful with creating apps and programming. So if you haven't downloaded Perplexity, Replit. Replit is an incredible app that we've been playing around with. You don't have to be technical to build full-on applications. I do want to touch on one fun thing with AI before we do a poll. I actually did a prompt where I said, ask me in an interview these 10 questions one at a time and help me assess my remote ready and AI prepared, right? There's like broken English, but it gets it. I was writing it really quickly before this call. I wanted to get it in here. And then I asked AI, actually I asked Gemini, I separated AI, give me 10 great questions to ask to help assess my readiness, right? And then I just pasted it in. And by the way, if you don't know this already, at the World at Work conference, not a lot of people do this. So if I'm writing a prompt, help me, interview me, then you can hit Shift Enter, right? And then you can get a new line and you can, format it, where you can format the prompt, something else, and then another Shift Enter. So you don't need to copy paste from Word or something like that. And Shift Enter works in LinkedIn messaging. Actually, Shift Enter for new line works in basically all apps, from Facebook to Instagram to whatever. If anything you use, hit Enter and it sends automatically, like ChatGPT. Definitely know the Shift Enter hotkey. But anyway, so I asked it to do that. I asked the prompt, Shift Enter, and then paste. And then it goes through and asks me these questions one at a time. So, does your company's communication default to asynchronous document first or synchronous meeting first, right? And I can say, I'll just copy because it's a long word. I'll say, as a remote team, we are, and now it will go on to the next question. It may assess it depending on what it noted, right? And then it will keep going. And then after the 10 questions, it will give me it will actually assess it for me based off of the criteria I put in the original prompt. Actually, it includes, it's hard to read it, but it includes the criteria. And then I can continue to have a conversation and I can actually ask it to really be critical and help me understand better what I can do. So if you haven't done this style of interview using AI to interview, or maybe in a team, we're all sitting in a meeting together and like, hey, let's have AI facilitate this session. And I put in a prompt of a series of questions I'd like it to ask, right, that I actually worked on before the call. So it's pretty fun to do that. I use that a lot, even with strategy for my business or how to have a conversation with somebody. Interview style is really fun. So just a couple tips on AI. But before we go, I think we have a poll through. You want to pull that poll up? I love that. All right, we have a lot to go through, so I'm going to end the poll in just a second here. Still, people are still submitting, though. All right. I have a lot to go through, so I'm going to keep going here. Yeah, content creation. Almost 90% of you are using it for content creation. Of course, that's the best thing to do with it. But I love that almost 40% are using it for performance reviews. And we see that, yes, that's awesome that half of you are using it for your employee handbook. I guess I should clarify, what did that mean? You're using it to write your employee handbook, or using it so that people can talk to your employee handbook through a Gen AI? Something I should maybe clarify for. I'd be curious, maybe if we want to put in the chat, how are you using it for offboarding or compensation or onboarding or employee recognition. Using it to compose the offboarding strategy or the questions, or using it to analyze the offboarding in general. There's a lot of things we could be doing with it. But yeah, I love that across the board, people are using it heavily for a lot of things. All right, so let's talk about 6 different things you can do. Moving on to that part of we can definitely share the results. Let me see if I can. Should I just upload a picture? Let me just. Can you do pictures? You can't upload pictures. I don't know if you guys can help with that. I'm not able to share the poll, but maybe we can share the poll afterwards. Yeah, thanks, Rue. Yeah, so here's the problem, right? Manual workflows and data gaps across disconnected systems are generating around, again, as I mentioned earlier, 30 minutes a day of lost productivity per employee. And so that's going to compound, right, as the organization grows. So what can we do? So we can conduct, and first of all, we want to first conduct a comprehensive audit of all of our processes and vendor systems. And you should do this every year. From the hire to retire, the employee lifecycle, look at that unified architecture and see if there's any gaps, things like maybe using spreadsheets as an example, or maybe disconnected. And you want this to be done by your VP of People Ops. Or if you don't have if you're a smaller team, your HR director should be the one, evaluating your applicant tracking system, how that ties into your HRIS, and how that ties into the offboard. So just first of all, just review it all, put it on a whiteboard, have a meeting, and see if your system is a fluid hire to retire system. Number 2. So again, because we can be remote now, we can be hybrid, we can hire anywhere we want. We just need to know how to do it. So you can do the EOR, right? Employee of record. I think Deal is an example. It's not cheap, but you can use it to just immediately be in Mexico City or be in India or London. So Bangalore, validate to do that. The deal record, the deal route, or the EOR is great to validate certain places or locations. So you don't have to first build out that local footprint. You can just immediately be there through an employer of record, because obviously different countries or different cities have incorporation that can take 3 to 6 months. You may have to have local. You will have to have local legal counsel. And this can be a lot of work. So a little personal story was we wanted to open in Canada, specifically British Columbia, specifically Vancouver. And so instead of doing the deal route, we hired a lawyer, we built out the team, we built out the office, and then very quickly we found out how challenging it is compared to the United States on hiring people, and the local laws can be almost anti-business. So to be incredibly careful, and it ended up being more work than it needed to be. And so we reversed course. So I think that's why it's really useful to use the EOR route. You can test different locations, test with working with that population before moving on to actually building out the full infrastructure. And so that's advice, obviously, for smaller companies usually. And then another plan is standardizing your operating rhythms. That's one of the key themes of this talk. So in 2026, really successful people ops leaders should be thinking about their role, not just as, ticket triage, but product designers, right? And things like employee recognition or wellness, these programs, you really are doing, you're an intrapreneur. You are doing product marketing, sales, all within your organization. So we want to help you transition to do that, because we're not necessarily all amazing at marketing or being an entrepreneur, right, inside your organization. But we can use AI, using AI native in the hiring, in the automation process, that can cut down on costs and create that total experience that helps you bridge those gaps. So AI can be very good at helping you identify those gaps and help you learn how to create those rhythms so that you can connect with both your corporate office and your back office. And then here's four examples that you can utilize for that. So next is the idea of standardizing and continuing to standardize your operating rhythms. Wait a minute, I think this is the last one, also 3. Oh yeah, I guess I doubled up on this one. That's right. I wanted to talk about, I mentioned earlier the 3-3-3 rule. So this is really cool. So this is a way to help with productivity as well. But more of a structural perspective. So you'll, instead of having more meetings, right? Instead, you have a rule where there's only 3 meeting types. And there's only 3 meetings, and there's 3 types. So it's a weekly sync, coaching, and strategic sessions. And so that should replace meetings that could be done asynchronous through documentation. I think a lot of meetings are literally just someone just wrote it down and had it in a public place and sent out the link to review it a certain time every week, and then everyone can go read it on their own. I know Jeff Bezos is famous for having people come to the meeting and then they read the presentation in the meeting and then they start talking about it. So that could be the meeting itself, just making people come and read it, and that's it. But we want to be able to have, if it's not written down, it's not happening, as I mentioned before. Meetings should be an exception, not a default, and information should be discoverable by design. And to make it even more useful, we want to be able to put that information connected to a Gen AI that you can ask questions of the AI rather than having traditional search. Just to go a little bit more on the 3-3-3. So what I love is, so you start your day with 3 hours of focused, uninterrupted work. So 3 hours of work a day, either in the beginning or the end of the day, depending on what you're doing. This could be developing a strategy or doing an analysis, deep thinking, right? Preparing for a presentation, silent your notifications. At the Great Place to Work conference, they had Angela Duckworth, who wrote Grit, which is a new book on situations. I believe it's called Situation. And it's a new book on the idea that, your space, for instance, I have my phone right here. It should not be here. It should be somewhere else. It should be out of reach. My space is where I can touch with my hands. And you want to have that space clear, right? So, and that's part of that uninterrupted time. And then you want to focus on 3 important things. So it could be that one rock. It could be those medium tasks. But you want to have those 3 things you can go off of that day. So again, reviewing documents, following up with colleagues, making decisions. And then there's those 3 maintenance tasks. So this is similar to the 1-3-5 rule. It's kind of a slightly different take, where it includes the time you have, the 3 hours you have of interrupted time a day to get to those rocks that you have. So teach this and model this so that people will do it too. All right. 4th is digital equity and frontline integration. So this is really important for companies that have frontline workers. So connectivity is not a privilege, it's a right. It's an organization, and it's a fundamental work utility. And the problem is our frontline staff oftentimes cannot participate in those strategy, in that culture, in those asynchronous workflows, because they're on their feet. And sometimes we punish them for being on their phones, like a driver, for instance, right? I think these things will be changing as we see proliferation in devices like, augmenting our experience through glasses or an earpiece, AI earpiece or AI glasses, to be able to be more connected on the ground. But it's not just a business risk. I think it's also it's just not good for equity. We want to make everyone feel included inside the organization as a value and as a mission. And so seeing that DEI is down, according to the Reward at Work survey, it's actually a strategic advantage to continue to be a champion of DEI, because it's not going away. Diversity inclusion is a strategic asset. And that includes, in my opinion, your frontline staff. So we want to focus on how to solve these issues with non-desk workforces in these digital deserts, as you can call them. Or people who are in areas that may not have reliable internet, maybe they just have phone. That's why I recognize we take advantage of text messaging to connect with people who may not have such strong access to internet, or they might be on the go, right? So we want to be thinking more about utilizing these mobile first communication tools Recognize also we also provide our customers with the announcement system. So the announcement system allows you to text message, push notification to the mobile apps. You get it in Teams, you get it in Slack, or you can get it on our website, obviously, SharePoint, Outlook. And it's posts from the leaders. And these things can be posted across these different channels. So we can connect with really anybody. And that's what you need to be doing as well if you're not already. All right, the fifth one here is performance management transformation. So I showed a table earlier that's somewhat like this, where there's an old way and a new way, right? And this should be part of your learning and development leaders playbook for this year, for 2026. Basically, it's the idea of getting away from proximity bias and moving towards an outcome bias. Imagine a world where we're actually elevating our employees based off of outcomes rather than just proximity, right? And that's actually the strategic advantage of being remote first, is having to face that head on. And now you're going to see, what you'll see is high achievers being elevated faster, because it's not just somebody who's really good at chumming it up in the break room. It's someone who is creating results and seeing impact. And so you need to be to showcase these results, document these results, document these achievements, so that it's easier to know who the high achievers are to elevate them quicker, right? And that's a problem if you're going off of the old model, proximity based, then those people can be invisible, or you run the risk of people who are in the office actually taking credit for the work of the remote worker, right? Because they're not there to defend themselves. So you want to look for those types of patterns and squash them through, again, having documentation, teaching managers how to have that weekly cadence, so that one-on-ones are not just about the weather, but actually through a structured process that managers are being measured on, so that they want to be held accountable through that, because they're doing an MEI, right? A manager enablement index. So, and lastly, having a place that has psychological safety. So if you're not surveying on psychological safety, you should be. It's easy to ask those questions in that survey to know that people actually feel like they can come forward and speak up and not be penalized for that. Last one is an AI first roadmap. So you want to work backwards. I have a calendar on my whiteboard behind my computer here, and I have the same thing in Notion as well. And I have one for my personal life, and I have it for my family, right? You want to know where you want to be eventually. And if you're not, don't feel bad if you fall behind. Feel good that you're actually measuring that you're doing these things. And if you fall behind, then try to catch up. One of my goals this year was to, by May, be meditating 30 minutes a day. I am not doing that. But if I do it sometimes, at least I'm doing it sometimes, rather than last year where I didn't meditate at all, right? So I think it's really critical to at least write down the things we're trying to accomplish and have a roadmap for success. And, I just want to highlight for 2027, I really see a future where, the rhythms, the structures, the patterns, the culture that we've created, that total experience is actually a layer across the entire organization, or at least 60% of it, through an AI, right? The future is now, especially with things like digital twins and Gen AI, to be able to augment our experience in the workplace, where now you can have a digital twin of the CEO. You can ask the CEO any question you want. I think that should be everywhere, and it will be, I believe, in 2027. All right, so I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir here on this one, but culture is the social glue. Culture is felt intuitively at 50 people, but at 5,000, it must be deliberately operationalized. So that includes rituals, storytelling, structured social events that will bridge the gap between the remote work, especially across that many people. One of our customers, when they launched Recognize, they actually did a 24-hour event, right? And they used, at the time, it was Workplace by Meta, but you can utilize other tools. You can utilize, Teams. But if you are an international company, a company that the lights never turn off, you actually can do an international 24-hour event and as a town hall essentially, and do this once a year or every 6 months, right? It's all about showing up and showing your company that you care, and having special guest speakers, and having essentially a conference that goes on for 24 hours that people can tune in and watch the next day. APAC to Europe to the United States and beyond. It's really cool if you can do that. And then also another idea is having a cross-border buddy system. So Harvard Business School has found that when you onboard, if you're tied to a mentor, you're much more likely to be successful, stay at the company, higher productivity. So, what about having a cross-border buddy system? I talked about earlier about a business partner and I holding each other accountable. You can have a buddy system like that where you're paired up with someone in another region. And it could be simple, easy rituals like a virtual coffee or a pets channel or morning update. One thing that we do on our team, that another fun thing is group events. So we had one this week actually, or time flies. No, it was last week. Last week I think it was on Thursday, we had hot takes where everybody had a take, and then everybody else would say they either 100% agree or 100% disagree. And one of them was money makes happiness, and so people were very kind of split on that. And then some people would try to be wishy-washy, and I was like, no, you can't. You have to be 100% agree, 100% disagree. So that was really fun, and we do a pitch contest. We have to come up with a product idea and then pitch it, and then people will vote on it. There's so many fun things you can do for these virtual water cooler sessions that go beyond just, name one thing that nobody knows about you, and these kinds of more traditional kind of boring things. There's some really fun things we can be doing, and using AI to generate the content for these ideas. So talent, optimization, growth, kind of rounding out here the last few things. But high achievers want purpose. High achievers want a visible path forward. So try to design programs that allow for that. Skill-based internal mobility is really critical. Having that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day onboarding timelines is really important. We want to be upskilling as well, providing Udemy subscriptions and things like that for anyone who wants to have a book club where you read books together and learn how to be A players. Just want to touch on 3-pillar operating model as well. We want to have digital operations, right? We want to take advantage of actually using AI to create digital agile pods, as they're called. You can Google that if you want to learn more about it. But you can have a higher ratio of HR business partners to employee count by having these agile pods where you have designers, you have AI connected to that, right? And then this can, for instance, there could be a data analyst or a learning designer or a recruiter in like an onboarding and retention pod. So you can kind of create these HR pods that can actually increase the effectiveness of your organization and allow you to be more focused on strategy in HR. And again, as I touched on, I want HR to become more of a product designer, right? Rather than just a ticket triage. So building scalable systems, right? Doing user research, outcome measurement, and bubbling that up to the C-suite. Again, creating these action plan. This is even a simpler one than the other one, right? So as we touched on in the very beginning, audit your systems, right? Phase 2, make sure your managers are now coaches and not bosses, right? And go into an AI first HR into the next year. We're going to be sending the slides afterwards if you want to read through this. Yeah, so thanks so much for joining, everybody. Rounding out with 10 minutes left on this full hour. I'd love to touch on any questions, anything like that. I do know that we have a poll, so let's go ahead and put the poll up. I'd love to know whether or not you enjoyed this session, whether or not you felt that it was relevant to you. So let us know if you felt that this was a good presentation on that front. Please come to our next webinar. It is, I think, in about a week on Tuesday. Yeah, 1 week from now. And it's going to be on compensation. So how to align pay across remote, hybrid, and frontline teams, no matter where they work. I'll end the poll so everyone can see that. It looks like moderately relevant at 56%, slightly relevant with 17%. And thank God nobody said it was not relevant. If you said it wasn't relevant, I'm sure you probably would have left by now. But thank you so much to the very relevant people at 28%. Hopefully compensation will get a higher percentage of people saying very relevant next session. If there's anything that I could have done differently, feel free to email me. I am alex@recognizeapp.com. If you want to create a conversation, if you want to see how Recognize works, please write me. We also do live demos as well, group demos or one-on-one sessions of Recognize. So our next one-on-one is our next group session. I believe if Jess, we have that, I'll maybe just paste that in the chat of when the next live one is, if we are having one. Otherwise, our website is recognizeapp.com. Love to help anyone with recognition, with surveys, with rewards automation. We're exploring new products and one-on-ones and performance reviews and onboarding, all taking advantage of AI and making things super affordable. We do not believe that these types of systems, these types of engagement programs should cost an arm and a leg. Recognition should be affordable. We have about 8 minutes left. If anyone has any questions, please submit them. But for anyone for the group left, I can go ahead and just keep showing how Recognize works. Again, this is in Microsoft Teams, and this is how you can automate your anniversaries and how people celebrate work anniversaries and actually give additional points and comment and like anniversaries and birthdays happening in the company. And then, yes, then you can take those points you earn from your anniversaries, from challenges and recognitions and things like that, and go and redeem a parking spot or time off. So items that you offer. You can offer experiences and gift cards, things like Visa or and we help 150 countries with rewards. So we basically cover every country there is for the rewards. But I love the live events. I love being able to, hey, like it's baseball season. Whoops. Oh, see, I'm in the wrong browser. Let me show you the live events. Pretty cool. So I actually just took my sister to a comedy show. John Mulaney, if you've heard of him, he was hilarious. So I'll go ahead and show you how that works. So I have 2,000 points. That means I can go into live events. And the cool thing is you can use some of your points. So if you don't have enough points because it's so expensive, then you can go ahead and redeem part of it for the live events. We also, I can mention, is in things like, sharing to Viva Engage, Outlook as well. Thanks so much, Jamie. Thanks for coming. As a manager, you're notified each week of who's doing something awesome on your team. We actually notify on the phone as well, managers. So we have a full engagement program for managers, reminding them who's been recognized, who hasn't been recognized. And we send this out to the admin. So if you're an HR professional, you want to know who your top managers are, or who's being a quote unquote a low performing manager on recognition, you can do that here. Also access all Recognize from within Outlook. So more to show on that. Please come and schedule a demo with us. You can schedule just on our website, recognizeapp.com. I'll just go there now. It's just recognizeapp.com. You can actually, in a couple of days, we'll have the next banner here for the next webinar. It's easy just to come here and reserve that seat. We are building out a new webinar section in Recognize. We launched it as a beta last week. We do have webinars coming soon. So yeah, anyway, look for that soon. Again, it is beta right now. So we just launched it. It's not fully fleshed out with all the bugs, but we're going to do one more push. And then we're going to have all the webinar sessions that we do are going to be here, past and future. We do about a webinar about every week. So look to that in the future. Always free. Thanks everybody for coming, and have a great rest of your week. And that was yesterday. Cinco de Mayo, everyone. Happy Cinco de Mayo. Take care.